How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
It's hot, y'all, and it's only going to get hotter. The average summer temps in Philly have creeped up over the last few years, and the thing is, that affects our health in very surprising ways. Our friend Tony Wood, the Philadelphia Inquirer reporter who covers weather, has a new book out that explores this and Philly's role in the history of climate science research. It's called Something in the Air, a 4-season guide to weather and health. It's Monday, June 30th. I'm Trenae Nuri, and here's why Philly's sweating. All right, Tony, let's get this out of the way first. How is the climate changing our city? It's not just our perception that the weather is getting unusual. Like some days in late May and early June were like almost like fall-like temperatures. But then there's days where it gets so hot. So it's more than just our perception. Like the climate is changing Philly.
Well, the climate is changing. We know the world's getting warmer, but the urban climate change is really accelerated. I mean, it's the difference between the temperature in a South Philly or North Philly neighborhood can be 7-8 degrees higher than it is out in the sticks. That's because we've done so much building, and there are so many the black rooftops that retain and reflect heat. And we have a real issue with not enough tree cover in the denser neighborhoods. And, you know, it's a source of discomfort for sure for you and I. But it just keeps getting warmer in the cities. It's outpacing worldwide warming. And the other aspect of that, of course, is that the more development you have, the more runoff you have. So that increases urban flooding. In the case of Philadelphia and other urban areas, it's really deadly for the elderly live alone population. You know, there are so many people who live alone these days, and heat waves, I mean, the people who die mostly are these people who are just alone.
I want to go back to your book, Tony. You started off the book talking about just how almost simple it seems. Like I've heard folks growing up saying, "Oh, my knee's starting to hurt. That means it's about to rain." The impacts that weather has on our bodies.
Yeah, it's something we don't even think about. And one thing I hope people get from this book is I hope that they do understand that they're connected to something larger. You know, we're so insulated now. We think we've pretty well conquered nature, and the fact is that you can't get away from the environment inside your house. And my mother was she was an atmochondriac, I would say. You know, she would always talk about, you know, her bones aching when a storm was coming, and I didn't pay much attention to her.
But it was true.
Oh yeah. Well, later on, I said, "Wow, who knew?" You know, I really got into the subject. It was a serendipitous thing. I mean, I've been interested in weather for a long time, even in grade school, but. You know, I was living in Ann Arbor, and I wandered into this bookstore. It was a little bookstore called Borders, which later became a giant chain, of course. But I found something called the Weather Almanac, and I was just kind of reading it in the store, and I came across like this 3-page section about biometeorology, and I said, "Well, this is really interesting." Well, one of the anecdotes was about a Philly guy named Francis Davis. Now, you wouldn't remember him. He was a very famous TV weatherman, probably one of the first in the country to be a TV meteorologist. And he later became the Dean of Science at Drexel for many years. And he was a serious scientist. He had done a study about how cold fronts aggravate ulcers. And I thought, that's fascinating. You know, something I would have never thought of. And years later, I interviewed him a couple times, and we had a sort of a professional relationship. And he told me this incredible story that I mentioned it in the book, but it involves the Philadelphia Eagles. 1979, the Eagles had a Super Bowl team. Everyone assumed these guys would win it all. And they went to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers, right? The Bucs weren't that good. Eagles were heavily favored. And Francis Davis called Dick Vermeil, who was the Eagles coach then, and said, if I were you, I would take those people to Tampa Bay a week ahead of time. Just because you don't know what's going to happen to your body when you get there.
So he was saying, like, get the players like acclimated
yes.
to that Florida weather.
He said, yes. Yeah, he said, you got to do that because it was December in Philly. Okay. And they're there too, obviously. But they have a different kind of December in Tampa Bay. But they went like the day before the game. The first half, they were just totally run off the field. They were just sluggish. They didn't really catch any kind of momentum going until it was too late in the game and they lost. And I called Vermeil and I said, look, I was talking to Francis Davis and he told me he warned you to take that team to Tampa Bay a week before the game. And he said, you know what? That professor was right. He says, I am really so sorry. I did not do that.
Tony, I want to go back to this anecdote that you just talked about of how basically the Eagles coach of 1979 didn't listen to this Drexel professor. And you define this as biometeorology, like basically this intersection between how the atmosphere impacts living organisms. I mean, what really inspired you to write this new book?
Well, this is, again, I was very inspired by just seeing these 3 pages of material in this weather almanac. And I've always been interested in the atmosphere. And I got really into this reading about Francis Davis. And then there was another article in there about another Philadelphia science giant named Joseph Hollander. Hollander was one of the founders of the American Arthritis Foundation. He was just a national icon in the arthritis universe. Hollander had arthritis, and he was convinced the weather affected him. And he said, I'm going to prove this. And I think what he really proved is that we are as complex as the atmosphere. I mean, it is very idiosyncratic. I mean, what affects you is not going to affect me and vice versa. I think you get a better deal there, by the way, but that's okay. I have just all sorts of little atmospheric maladies, I guess, that made me more interested in the subject. But before the mid-19th century, it was just accepted that weather and climate drove health. And this did not change until germ theory came along. In fact, the National Weather Service, one of the reasons it was founded was to keep track of weather variables because it was understood that they had such a profound effect on human health. After germ theory, we kind of went the other way and we said, no, the hell with that. I mean, we're too advanced to be affected by the atmosphere. But in the 1950s, biometeorology really made a comeback. There were a couple of pioneers who did some excellent work. One of them was Helmut Landsberg, who did the great heat island experiment that just show how urban development affects the temperature in an environment. And it's a shame. He had a lot of great suggestions that everybody ignored. And that's how we got where we are today. But that's life. And yeah, I was just always really, really interested. And when I read about seasonal affective disorder, I thought, wow, I get it now. I know why the light affects me like this. And you could feel you're mentally ill. And it doesn't mean you aren't, but I mean, you could feel that you're mentally ill. But sometimes it's your environment that's having this incredible effect on your well-being.
We've got more on how Philly's climate is impacting us all after the break. We all know Philadelphia is a revolutionary city, full of American firsts. But did you know that Philly is home to America's first penitentiary? It started as a bold 19th century experiment to reimagine the criminal justice system in America, and it continues today with Eastern State. Eastern State is a nonprofit dedicated to deepening our collective understanding of the criminal justice system. On the grounds of Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site, open to the public every day from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., tours, exhibits, and programs illuminate the powerful history and legacy of this iconic Philadelphia landmark. And the Eastern State Center for Justice Education, a nationally recognized voice in criminal justice education, serves as a catalyst for workforce development and a connection point that provides online and in-person opportunities for engagement, dialogue, and impact. Visit easternstate.org to learn more, plan your visit, and get involved. Discover, discuss, share at Eastern State. Every step, every stretch, every move, motion is what powers your life and drives your passions. At Rothman Orthopedics, they're committed to helping Philadelphia stay in motion. Rothman's mission has been and continues to be about providing their communities with high-quality, compassionate, and affordable orthopedic care grounded in evidence-based medicine. Rothman has experts in hand and wrist, hip, knee, shoulder and elbow, spine, sports medicine, joint replacement, and other specialties to address your individual concern, so you can find your rhythm again. Rothman offers care in Center City, South Philly, and Northeast Philly. To learn more or make an appointment, visit rothmanortho.com or call 800-321-9999 today. So, Tony, what does this summer have in store for us? Are we going to experience some heat waves, less rain? What are we going to feel?
Well, I can guarantee you, first of all, we will have heat waves, for sure. We always do. And I also would expect we're going to have probably more thunderstorms than we had in the past. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, anybody who tells you that they can give you a forecast for 3 months out, ignore them. We can go maybe 7 to 10 days, but the whole field of long-range forecasting is still so primitive, it's almost laughable. But we can say with certainty that we're going to have more 90-degree days than normal, almost a guarantee, because the world's temperature is a little higher, and the city is hotter. One thing we have going for us, though, strangely enough, and I've gone through the records and I'm scratching my head as to why heat wave deaths have not increased as much as I would have expected, given the fact that the summers have been hotter. Well, with a warmer planet, you have more water vapor. So that means you're going to have more opportunity for showers. And I believe that a lot of our heat waves, unlike the heat waves of the 90s, have been interrupted by showers. And if you have even 1 day of a break in a heat wave, it makes all the difference in the world. In 93 and 95, 99, other deadly summers, we've had, runs of 20 and 25 days, 90 plus. We have not had that in recent years. We've had more 90-degree days, but we've had fewer consecutive 90-degree days, if that makes sense. And I think the reason for that, and a couple of meteorologists agree with me, although data is very elusive, and this is relatively new in terms of research. It might well be that thunderstorms have been a real godsend for us. Not that they don't bring their own trauma, but I would suspect we'll probably have our 25, 30, 90-degree days. And I also think that in the end, we're going to have fewer prolonged heat waves. At least I hope so.
And I want to go back to your book, and it's looking at biometeorology. If our bodies are reacting to the changes of the atmosphere, will we as Philadelphians ever adapt? Or will we keep experiencing those aches and pains when a thunderstorm's about to come?
I think we're amazingly adaptable. there's a lot of concern about abrupt climate change, which I think is certainly a threat. But whereas as beings, we have shown amazing adaptability. I mean, I think of the colonists when they came here from England and other places in Europe. Um, they were shocked at the climate of the New World, and the reason it was so different is we're on the other side of the Gulf Stream. They were getting winds off the ocean, and England had a much more moderate climate than even Jamestown, Virginia. But the colonists eventually they adapted. And think of all of the peoples from tropical and subtropical areas who now live in the United States and in Canada. Eventually you adapt, and our bodies were challenged, but they're amazingly resilient. So I think we win, no matter what the atmosphere tries to do to us. I think we prevail.
Well, what happens when my allergies start acting up? How does the weather affect our allergies? Because I know a lot of Philadelphians are impacted by seasonal changes.
Well, you're talking to me. I mean, I'm a walking allergy clinic. This is another interesting thing about the warmer world. No question, even though again the data deficiencies in pollen would shock you. This is one of the real surprises I had when I was researching the book, just how poorly pollen is tracked. But there's no question, logically, that pollen levels are increasing. That's because plants get warmer, it's wetter, it's more carbon dioxide. Tree pollen and grass pollen and ragweed should just keep bumping up year by year. The one thing we have going for us, again, is this wetness thing. Rain is our friend. Well, when it rains, I mean that's our friend. Pollen won't fly in the rain. So whenever I see rain in the forecast, I'm pretty happy. And if we can get more rain in the spring, I mean that will neutralize the increase in pollen. But again, we're talking about a serious data shortage here. We do know that pollen is with us forever. I had a little anecdote in the book about New York's war on ragweed. New York decided that we got to get rid of this stuff. So they did a 9-year eradication plan to get rid of all the ragweed in the city. Well, they got rid of a lot of the ragweed. It made no difference, though, because this is just putting two and two together. I mean, this stuff is born on wind. So if you get rid of it at the source, it doesn't mean that you're going to be safe. The wind's going to blow to you from somewhere else, And I think the grass season is the one that's getting me more these days. And this time of year, the grass and the trees overlap. And ragweed is really annoying. It's an ugly plant, and it's ubiquitous, and it's absolutely indestructible.
And Tony, to that note, before we even started recording this episode, you told me something that it really stuck with me. No one remembers weather. True. I mean, this whole conversation, you break it down in your new book, weather, climate, it impacts us socially, it impacts our bodies. But why don't people remember it?
That's a great question. I guess they have other things in their mind. And these days, of course, there are just so many distractions. It's a low priority for most people, and who knows what I'm not thinking about when I'm thinking about weather. Maybe maybe society would be better if I thought about something else. Who knows? But I think weather is just, it's a great subject. Years ago, a colleague at the paper asked me why I was so in the weather, and I was just astonished. I said, well, how could you not be? I mean, this is the life support system. We live and breathe in this stuff. How could you not be interested in it?
Do you think it's because people see that it changes so much and then sometimes they prepare as best they can, but then something happens and they then don't trust it?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. That's a good observation. But I also think that even if people aren't consciously thinking about the weather and thinking about it, with any sense of logic, there's just something ancestral about it. Like there's one decent hypothesis about migraines that a guy, a Harvard headache specialist, told me about, and I think about it, it's plausible. Migraines might have been an early warning system. They might have been the precursor of the iPhone Amber Alert, that our ancestors would get these headaches when a storm was coming. And that was a message, we better go do something about this. We co-evolve with the atmosphere. So I think even if people don't think about it and aren't conscious of it, you can't get away from it. It's part of us, and it's magical, and it's interesting to me every day. I mean, storms sometimes look similar, but weather never replicates. They're always a little different. Every day I get up, I first thing I do is I look outside. One thing, by the way, I would advise people to do, if there's one takeaway from health tip, get out in the morning immediately.
Yes, I do remember you telling me that in a previous episode. Yes,
you got to get out there. You got to get out there and stay with it.
Because you said get your vitamin D.
Yeah, right away. And none of that. I mean, the light's in a favorable spectrum, so that will charge you up for the day.
Tony, how hot will this summer be?
Well, I'd be a fool to make a specific prediction, but I would, just judging from trends, I would think that this will finish in like the top 10 warmest. Now, it does not mean that it's going to be in the top 10 for discomfort, like I said, because we've been on a nice run here where we're getting a lot of heat, but we're not sustaining it. And I think that trend's going to continue because, we just have so much water around us. And in that sense, we're lucky. But look, if you don't have air conditioning, it's going to be a really hot summer.
Tony Wood, reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, who writes about weather and has a new book, Something in the Air, a 4-season guide to weather and health. Tony, thank you so much for breaking this all down with me on CityCast Philly.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed this episode, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.